technique that you did here?
So that's spray paint. That's newer. I mean, I've been using spray paint for a long time. When I was in New York during the pandemic, I'd spray paint in our apartment, and my husband would be like, "Ah."
I can't breathe.
Meanwhile, I'm used to, even when I paint with acrylics, he comes in and he's like, open a window. I'm like, I'm probably going to die of plastic poisoning. But that's spray paint. So I spray painted a few tote bags just for fun. And
it looks like a piece of art, but I guess it was because you like were laying the tote bag.
So I did the tote bag like on newsprint. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So then I intentionally got a piece of paper out and then laid out and then did a piece of art from it. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, I want to do more of those.
Now, did you just get the idea for the tote bags? Like
I have spray painted on tote bags a bunch.
Okay.
I painted on a few vintage Louis Vuitton bags for my friend that lives in New York. She has like a vintage shop, and they were pretty beat up. So she's like, "Can you paint them? Maybe we could sell them." I was like, "Sure."
That's super cool.
And then I painted it with a brush, but I was like, "Oh, it'd probably have been easier just to use spray paint."
Yeah.
So I bought regular tote bags. I'm not splurging on fancy bags. So spray paint on.
So was the Louis Vuitton the first bag you'd really painted on?
I've done them before. I think I forget the name of the online like live shopping service. It was during the pandemic, like 3 or 4 years ago. And they were like, hey, we got these beat up bags. You want to paint on them? And I was like, sure. And it went viral because Louis Vuitton purists are purists.
Yeah.
No shade. But I was like, oh, I didn't realize. I was like, but the bag was like, it was not in good shape. So it was more of like just adding a new life to it.
Repurposed.
And I've always wanted to do it since, but then other things kind of got in the way. And then when my friend came to visit, she was like, paint these. And so that kind of spurred painting on just regular canvas tote bags. And then that led to that piece, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Cool. What is your favorite like method of painting?
I would say I think it's because I do have a lot of migraines and like sometimes I get off balance. I do prefer the more geometric work. I think it's a nice balance of like control and limitations, but then also freedom within the gradient. I do enjoy these, but then you're making like tons and tons of iterations just for one of them to be good.
Right.
So I think sometimes for me that can get frustrating, not in an exciting way. So I prefer the ones where I have like a little bit of control and limitations that I could set for myself. Yeah.
So I've watched you on your Instagram do these, but I think you speed it up. Is that correct?
Yes. People are like, how do you rip off the tape like that? I was like, don't rip it off. I'm like, I go very slowly and say some prayers.
And is there like any technique with the tape you've learned?
Yeah, so there's tons of technique, but it's every person's different. I use frog tape, and this is like light adhesive. I need to get
a painter's tape?
Yeah, just painters so they can get it like, at Lowe's, Home Depot. I think for canvases, I need one that's a little more adhesive because sometimes the paint will bleed underneath. But on paper, light adhesive works, and sometimes it doesn't. Like I have ruined so many paintings, and you just kind of like deal. But if it's too cold, it'll peel up the tape, so it has to be warm. The paint itself has to be warm, and you want to let it dry a little bit, but not too much. So, but I feel like the more you do it, the more you kind of get used to it.
Yeah, I did see one clip where you talked about working on some of your art, and you went somewhere where the climate was cold.
Yes.
And the paint
ruined it. I painted that painting like 6 times, and I was like, why am I painting outside? I was like, what's wrong with me? Because it was so pretty, and it wasn't that cold, but it was cold enough where like the paper and the tape didn't get along.
How did you figure out that it was the temperature that was doing
that? Happened one time, and then I was visiting my parents, and they live in New York, like 2 hours north of the city, and they like their house to be pretty cold. Not cold, but like, the older you get and you live in a cold house, I don't know, it's a trend. But then I was painting in my childhood bedroom, and I like ripped up the tape, and I was like, I wonder if temperature. So it's definitely like sample size of 2 experiences, but I avoid cold climate now when I paint.
Is it the same with like a hot environment too, that it can kind of mess it up?
I wonder. I mean, like here in LA hasn't been super hot. So I haven't painted in when it was
the
like,
desert.
yeah, the
Yeah.
desert, or like in like super humid New York, usually we'd have
Yeah.
the AC going. So I don't know.
Probably take a little longer to dry, but
Yeah.
maybe it would
Yeah.
peel off easier. I don't know.
Yeah, because it's not as like sticky.
I
I'll have to
guess
try.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
But I love that about your social media, though, is that you actually give
Thanks.
tips for people. Like,
Yeah.
you almost inspire people to want to get into art. Like,
Thanks.
because I mean, my mom's pretty good at art, and so my daughter's had a little bit of training. She's
Oh, that's
14.
awesome.
And so she's done a couple of like summer sessions at the Museum of Art
Oh,
in
that's sick.
Bakersfield. Yeah. And so, but watching your stuff actually kind of like made me like, oh, I want to try some art. Just because
Yay.
it's like
Oh,
all of the different techniques that
Yeah.
you use.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I don't share it too much. One, because when I'm filming myself painting, I mess up for sure. And then sometimes I'm like, does anybody really care? You know, sometimes like you post on Instagram and you're just like, is this going out into the void? Whereas like I feel like on X, at least when you share things, like you're chatting with people, whether it's like in your DMs or like in comments, and on Instagram, I'm just like, hello, this is the tape that I used, if anybody's wondering. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Would you say art is like a very like therapeutic tool for you?
Yeah, and I think that some of majority of my work is painted, but some of it is done digitally just because it's easier for client work and freelance stuff. But I really like being off of the screen. I think it just gives my brain a little bit of a break. So it's just nice to kind of like have quiet time and paint. And I usually don't listen to music while I'm painting unless like it's on the record player. So it's kind of nice to just be,
in your element.
My freshman year of college, my painting, well, she's my drawing professor, but she's a painter, Dana Frankfurt. She would not let any of us listen to music while painting. She's like, you should be like really present, like you're disconnecting when you're on your headphones, which is fine if like that's how you find your inspiration. But for the sake of that drawing class, she was like, just be here and draw the still life, which is like but like, you know, so that really stuck with me, the idea of like sometimes it's good just to be present.
How would you say your art has like developed and like came to be like from where you started to like where you're at now?
Yeah, so my earlier work was very figurative, definitely in a more abstract way, but I went to school as a graphic designer, and so I worked as a designer and art director full-time and then illustrated on the side. And I started off figurative because in advertising, it's really hard to see yourself reflected back at you. But then the same thing in art. You go to museums and like the depictions of womanhood are very much like either very religious or very sexual or commissions for like kings and queens. And so those are all valid, but I was like, well, I don't really see me in any of these. So I started making work that I could see myself in. And then I was really fortunate that people saw themselves in my work too. And over time, as I got older, that kind of turned into more abstract figurative work. And then fully abstract as I went from like the physical representation of being a woman to like the more emotional aspect of it. And then that I think opened my work up more to just being more about emotions and touching on nostalgia and then questioning the idea of beauty all within these abstract simple forms. So it's been a cool journey for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, your color choices are really like interesting.
Thank
They
you.
are. I feel like sometimes they have like almost like tribal sort of feels, but then other times it just feels like fun, like a party, confetti. Like, I don't know. It's like so interesting for me to look through. Like, I'm almost getting like a Jamaican vibe off of this. Like, it's just so fun to look over.
Thank you. A lot of them are inspired by nature. So that one in particular, even though it's not done, I do have a photo of it. I don't know if I do. There are these really beautiful flowers at a botanical garden in Orange County, the name of which I forgot. And there's this really pretty, like the flower itself like had hanging off of it, like going from green to yellow to orange to red at the tip. So that's what inspired these. And some were facing upwards, but I think it was the end of its season. So some were starting to wilt. So the one that was kind of facing upwards is what inspired that. So a lot of the palettes are inspired by nature. This is different sunsets that I've seen. That inspired that. So a lot of the times it comes from the outdoors, which is really nice.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your NFTs?
Yeah. So, I mean, NFTs are the reason why I think I've felt the confidence boost to go fully into abstraction. I mean, before NFTs, the way I supported myself was doing commercial work, and I still do that, but the commercial work was just we love your figurative work. Let's make more figurative work. And I got to a point where I'm like, I kind of want to make more abstract work, but also I have to support myself. So NFTs really allowed me that financial wiggle room to be able to just make the work that I want to make. And then that came full circle where then different brands were like, oh, this is really interesting. We want to work with you on this. And I don't know if I would have taken that leap if I didn't have that.
Right.
And then it was also really nice to be able to put digital work out as fine art as well. I always kind of kept those two things separate. So now they're very much blended, which has been really cool. So it's been a fun journey over the last few years for sure.
I love seeing all of the different mediums that you have. I think it's probably the most, inspiring thing. Like, because so my first exposure to you was you had an NFT honorary for like SSA, I think.
Okay.
And I know, totally random project. And my friend was like, oh, Amber, she's so great. And I didn't even know who you were at the time.
That's so awesome.
But then more recently, I've been seeing your work pop up.
That's good. That means the algorithm's in my favor again.
It's working.
Yes.
You know how sometimes it's like Instagram right now is not in my favor. X is kind of my favor, so it just kind of ebbs and flows. I feel like.
X doesn't like me right now.
I feel like they all talk to each other. They're like, oh, you're good on that platform?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to tanker on that.
We need to balance you out and humble you out of this.
You're going to get big of a head and booming on all the platforms.
Exactly. Oh, but that's so cool.
Yeah, so that was my first sort of knowing who you were. And then after, wanting to kind of do the interview with you and doing all my research and seeing all of the stuff you did, I just thought, I can't believe there aren't more people talking about you. Like, it's so funny to me because it's like there's other people out here that are just grinding and trying to get their name out there, and you're just over here like, I have my collab with Cotton on, no big deal. I'll be on Art Blocks next week if you care.
Painting the Louis bag.
Yeah. So the Cotton On, how long has that been going on? And tell me a little bit about that collab.
So that's very similar to a lot of the collaborations that I did before NFTs. So Cotton On was one of the rare ones where they reached out to me to work together, and they actually licensed a lot of my older work and then had me kind of rework some of it to like fit onto the garment. So that started probably last spring, early summer, and then it came out in January, which is cool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's why
it just came out in January.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why maybe I might be a little more like blasé, but I'm like, just because of my brain, it's not new. I'm like, I'm excited about this.
On it for a while.
I hope y'all like it.
It's neat.
Thanks. Yeah, so it's been fun to work with them on it.
When did you get the idea to first go paint in one of the windows? That is like the
So
cutest
that was
idea.
their idea.
That was their idea?
Yeah. So Cotton On, where I grew up, there was just Cotton On, not Cotton On Body.
Oh, right.
And they were like, oh, do you want to like paint in a Cotton On Body? And I'm like, I don't know. Sure. I didn't know that like there was one in LA. And so there's one in Irvine, I think is south of here.
Yeah.
I'm still learning California geography. And so it was like an hour. I was like, I looked on Google and I was like, it's only 45 minutes away. And like I went in the later afternoon and then I was like, it was like an hour, 45.
Yeah.
They didn't care. It was fine.
Yeah.
But it was really fun to be able to paint in the window, but I don't paint on windows normally. So that was definitely, I like things like that, putting myself in like uncomfortable positions. And so we bought a bunch of paint markers, and originally the plan was to do like abstract shapes, similar, I guess similar to this, not all squares, but and then do gradients, but with the paint pen. And I started to do that and I was like, this looks terrible.
Was it just not blending well?
At all. And then like you would put it on top of each other and then like the chalk would peel off because it's like window chalk paint.
Dry, and then the layers wouldn't mesh.
Yeah, and I was like, oh no, whatever. So I Windexed it off because it's removable, and then I was like, what can I do that creates like a blend without it, like while like it intentionally looks like more messy, but not super messy. And then that's when I started to do kind of more of the scribble pattern on the window. So it created this nice like abstraction, and there's also 2 like full length photos behind me of models. So you didn't want it to compete, you just kind of wanted it to blend. So kind of viewed it as just like more confetti around those those photos versus it being like an artwork on its own. So it was really fun to do.
I thought it was so neat when I saw
I was
that.
like, I want to do more windows. Probably buy different paint markers, but I want to do more windows.
So you still stuck with the paint marker, you just changed the technique from doing the gradient to more of a swirl pattern.
Exactly, yeah.
Just pivoted.
Yeah.
Have you done any more painting on glass since then?
No, that was only a few weeks ago, which was nice. Yeah, that was recent.
Yeah.
No, so I haven't, but I'm like, oh, maybe we'll do that on our windows for Christmas or something. Our landlord would be like, what?
What are you doing?
But I don't think he'd mind if they look good. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to do more window
Now with
stuff.
the Cotton On rollout, is it only in like specific regions?
I believe so. I believe it's online internationally. Certain products are and certain products aren't, because like I know that some folks in Australia could get like the hat and the water bottle, but in the States folks couldn't. So not 100 on that, but it's in most Cotton On body standalone stores and in some Cotton On like hybrid stores, but not all of them.
That's awesome. I didn't know they made Cotton On body, actually.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome. I know. I think
it's really
like
big in Australia.
it's
I lived in
huge.
Australia for
Yeah.
5 years.
Oh, so you know more than me.
Like every mall has multiple Cotton On.
I
Like it's like a
crazy.
thing.
It's funny because like the only reason why I know that is because of Betty. She's like Cotton On, like she freaked out, and I was like, oh yeah, it's cool. I love them, but like yeah, the store in the mall that I grew up in, it was just Cotton On.
Yeah.
And there was no body, so it was fun to learn that they had Cotton On body when I found out about the project.
So your drop coming out next week.
Yeah.
Super exciting. So it's a Dutch auction.
Yeah, so it's a collaboration with Kelly Milligan. He's a generative artist in New Zealand, and I reached out to him last summer, and I was like, "Hi, if you'd ever want to collab, let me know." He's like, "Yeah, I'm a little busy, but I'll get back to you." And I'm in my head, I'm like, "He's never gonna get back to me. It's fine." But then he did a few months later. So it's on Art Blocks, and I believe it's what they usually do. It's like a settlement Dutch auction. So I think it starts at like 2.5 ETH and then settles out at 0.07 ETH within, I think it's going to take a half hour to go from one down to the other. But basically, like, say you're like, I really want one. I don't care if it ends up selling out at 2.5 ETH. You buy it at 2.5 ETH. Say it settles out at like 0.1 or 0.07. The contract will auto refund you the difference. So that's really nice.
Cool.
So
That's
like,
really cool.
everyone pays the same amount in the end, but I guess it gives people an opportunity to be like, I really want one. I don't want to sit here and wait for 30 minutes.
Right.
I know that
I'll buy it at 2.
this will be the most I pay.
Yeah.
Which that's pretty cool. So I've
that is
never
really
cool.
done, I don't think I've even done a Dutch auction on my work before. I've collected work via a Dutch auction, but I've never released work that way. So I'm
How
excited.
many are in that drop?
250.
Awesome.
Oh, it's 250 in that drop. Why did I think it was 31? Or is there 31 styles? 31 styles? Why am I thinking 31?
I'm trying to. Because it's on January 31st.
Oh, there you go.
I was like 31. It's funny. Someone commented on my post. They're like, "I thought this was a thread of 31 posts."
Okay,
like,
so
no.
it wasn't just me.
No, I was like, it's January 31st. That's a good. I'm gonna tweet that tomorrow. I'll be like January, January
And it's
31st.
250.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it's a dynamic piece, correct?
They
So
are.
they move.
So, like, I'll just use this as an example, even though this is not it. This is actually inspired by it as we were working on it. So, like, you mint a static piece, and, like, that's the piece. But you can go in and play where you can, like, push your mouse around and, like, move them. Or there are a few settings that Kelly has programmed in where, like, it'll just randomly, like, excite one, and then they'll all kind of fall again. There's one where they all fall in slowly from the top. So if you have a digital screen, like, you could just kind of keep it on loop. There is a video of Kelly's Samsung screen that he like built like a whole thing around that people loved and like assumed it was mine. I was like, do you see that outside of the window? Like that's way too cool looking for LA. I was like, that's not my house. So that's the nice thing is that it has motion in the background too. So it can live as multiple pieces and it's really cool to kind of see both of our work and styles come together.
I love that.
Thing.
So does he or do you two have plans for doing any like sculpture type pieces like that? Because
I mean, it would be cool. I've wanted to, I don't have any of them with me. I painted some like smaller pillars in my gradient colors and I play with AI a lot to make like larger than life sculptures. So hopefully one day I'll be able to make sculptural work out of a lot of these forms. I think it's just finding the right like company or person or place to partner with.
Right.
So
For
for
sure.
now they live in AI, which I love because
Yeah.
it can like kind of help you get your ideas out
Right.
instead of explaining it to someone.
Yeah, help you get inspired.
Yeah.
For
Like, could you imagine being like,
ideas.
I want to do like really big gradient orbs? People would be like, what? Whereas if you can show them an image of it,
Like, oh, that makes sense.
it helps. It goes a lot further.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the stuff like Beeple's done with his sculpture that
Yeah.
rotates. I forget the name of it, but you know, it's stuff like that that I think is really unique to this space. And
For
what
sure.
really captured my attention was when I went on and saw that like a living, like an actual sculpture with the NFT on it. I love stuff like that.
It's
I feel
so
like
cool.
that's the way. I feel like art is going to go that way. I feel like in
For
20 more
sure.
years, people are going to have more pieces that are alive on their walls.
I
and
hope
stuff.
so. Or even with like AR, I mean, AR will probably be contacts in 20 years, but like with glasses, like even if it, and this has been an idea I've had for a while, but like, again, I don't know how to program that.
Yeah.
So when you have like augmented reality on, like say it's a piece where something's like falling, like you can have it like fall within the setting that you're in.
Oh,
Right.
And then I think I saw that like on a meta presentation that like if you have AR and you go into someone's home, like you'll see all the art that they have like displayed, even though it's digital. So I would like for something
that's
like
really
that
cool.
to
More like
to-
mixed reality.
Yeah, exactly.
So much stuff is going to happen. I feel like with the mixed reality, and
Yeah, and I
NFT
think
is coming up.
I think that's kind of how we're gonna get more mainstream adoption as well,
For
when
sure.
people can actually visualize it and not just see like, oh, this is like,
on a screen.
yeah, this is on a screen. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't
Even though
count.
I still like things on a screen. I
Yeah.
mean, I think we all forget, like people that are like a little bit against digital art in general,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, it's just on a screen. And I was like, yeah, and what are you on 90% of the day? A screen.
Yeah.
So, but I do agree with you. Or like it'd be fun even like retroactively to like add digital or like moving elements to some of my paintings. So
Yeah.
like if AR were very much a thing, you could kind of see how I would like layer on top of a painting in a different way. So
bring
Now-
it to life.
Yeah. Now, how does it feel like from like looking at yourself like back in art school to now having partnerships with like Cotton On and like working on like these big brands and like having your art out there? Like how does that journey like feel to you?
Good. I try to remind myself of that when I'm feeling like, oh, I haven't done enough, or like I have all these goals and I haven't accomplished them yet. And then I'm like, I'm going to be 34 in a few months. I'm like, you're only 34.
Yeah.
Like 20-year-old you would like freak the fuck out.
Yeah.
Being like, what? That's the dream and you
Yeah.
did it. And I'd be like, yes, friend. So I try to remind myself of that every now and then. So it's a cool feeling for sure.
Yeah.
That's super cool though, because it's like you know that you can do more.
Yeah, which is, I feel like that it'll never end.
Yeah.
I'll be like 99. I'll be like painting on the ceiling.
The bar will always be set higher once you reach your goals. which is
Exactly.
awesome.
But yeah, trying to be a little more kind to myself in
Yeah,
that way. Be like,
most
it's okay. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be like an upwards only trajectory.
Yeah.
It could ebb and flow. So
And we all feel like, you have a bad day or week. Sometimes
Yeah.
it can be a couple of weeks.
For
and you're
sure.
like, oh my gosh, I'm not making progress, or I
Yeah.
had plans and not executing. And
Yeah.
it can be hard. Yeah.
for sure. But I feel like I try to remind myself we all go through that. So it's like
Yeah.
you're not alone in that feeling. It just
Yeah.
it happens to everybody at different times.
Yeah.
That's all.
No, and that's what I love, I think, about your art is that you're very open and honest about like how you use that as a medium, and like you really feel at peace. I feel like when I go on your Instagram, I just feel like it's just so peaceful.
Oh,
And
good.
so-
I'm glad.
I see you on X, and it's so funny because it's such just a degen world over there.
It really is. Yeah.
Between like all of the coins that are out and all
Airdrops,
of the weird
yeah.
logo art that's coming out, and then I see yours, and I'm always like, yay.
Yeah.
There's a little glimmer of
Yeah, the calm in the storm.
I know it's so hard too because I feel like because everyone's so online now that like to stand out, it's usually to be like very like attention grabbing or like in your face, and I'm just like not that person. Maybe if I watch like F1, I am that person, but like other than that, I'm not really that person. So that's been tough for me. I think as like social media continues to change, is like I don't like to be very like hypey about things unless I want to buy the thing and then I freak out and hype it. But like other than that, I just try to just be myself as much as one can. Translate that to the internet.
And I think that's like what people really like resonate with, because a lot of people will put on like a fake persona just like to be online, and like when you see someone genuine, like I always gravitate towards that because it's like that's real. Like I want to connect with someone who's real.
Oh no, yeah, like I think I had said like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for Thursday, and she goes, me either. I need to clean the house.
Yeah. Did I? Not really. I like vacuumed. I was like, that's fine.
It's so just humbling. Like you're so sweet to even open your home and your home studio.
It's better
office
for me
to us.
because, like, with the only negative about LA is because I get vestibular migraine, so the room will spin, and like I get them like along my cycle. So like driving scares me a little bit. I know when I can drive, but like when I'm like about to get my period, probably TMI, I get really bad migraines, and like I could kind of push through them, and like because I've had them since I was a teenager. But driving, I just coming from New York City and not having driven, I'm a good driver, but I don't want to test my limits of good driverness with a migraine.
Stuck in traffic too.
Yeah.
Like not knowing when it's gonna.
You're gonna get there.
Yeah.
I know.
LA is a different world for sure.
But I'm looking at this area is pretty walkable and things like that. So I appreciate you guys coming to me. You weren't too far. I don't think Westchester's that far. I'm like, okay.
15
But
minutes
still,
or
okay.
so.
How can we find you? Where can we find you? What's the best avenue to find you?
The internet? No, just kidding. But not. I would say my website, which is just ambervittoria.com. My last name is spelt with 2 T's. It's Italian, but it sounds like Victoria, so people get confused. But then also on social media, I think on all of them, I'm just Amber_Vittoria. Yeah.
Very good.
Awesome.
We will put that in the comments.
Well,
Make it easy. Yes.
Yeah.
That was wonderful. So.
absolutely.
Thank